Hi, Nathan. It's Miriam. I signed in trying to help you guys. I will sign out since you were able to open the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Who did it? Nathan?
Yes,
You're the man.
you know, I try. I was actually, I was running a few minutes late and I was just trying to open it and I thought Zoom was just being slow and then phone started ringing and Deacon's like, Nate, could you start the meeting? I'm like, okay. Well, I
Nice
guess
to have
we'll-
backup.
Yeah. So,
So there was message that Carrie's Wi-Fi died. So presumably she's not going to be here.
But we're recording it, so she can just take minutes.
This is Miriam. I just talked to her. Her Wi-Fi died and she's trying to reboot it.
Oh, okay, good. Let's see. So, well, it looks
Got a
like,
quorum.
yeah, that's what I was just checking. Well, I'll open the meeting. It doesn't look like, Miriam, you're the only member of the public. Do you want to make public comment at this point? Okay, we'll skip that. I was going to congratulate Jeff Weston, but he's not here.
might be worth at least hanging out for a minute just to let people, I guess, I mean, I don't know. You just kind of assume everyone, if the meeting's not started, you basically just kind of sit there and wait or, I don't know.
Well, I was going to open the meeting, and if
Well, yeah,
people join us, after we get started, that's fine. We can go over missed ground again if we need to.
that's true. That is true.
So the third agenda item, meet with select board on associate member appointments. I've been having a little trouble getting hold of Becky. At Farmer's Market on Saturday, she told me she thought it was 5:50 on the 21st, but that needs to be confirmed. So I will try more to get in touch with her and let you know before the 21st what the actual time is.
So this is when we go through our exercise with the select board to
Our joint meeting, yeah.
to agree on associate members. Yeah, I'm going to be away, so I won't be there.
Shame.
I'll be there. We just need a quorum.
Yeah. So and this would be Ashley and the
Jake.
other person,
Jake,
Jake. Okay. I've yeah. All right. So you've verified interest from both.
yes.
Okay. Now, do they have to be there to represent themselves in any way, or?
I'm assuming not. I assume I'm hoping this is a 2-minute exercise.
Yeah, I don't think they need to be there. We just need to know if they're interested.
And we do.
Yeah, I think that's all we need. And Ashley, I don't know if she said it to you, Deacon, or I just followed up where she said she's not going to be around. So
Yes, I got back to her and told her that she didn't have to go to the meeting on the 21st.
yeah, so we just need 2 more people besides you and I to be there from the board.
Yeah, and we'll make sure there'll be there'll be penalties.
Yeah. Steve, can you make it? And Linda?
What time is it?
Maybe 5:45, it sounds like.
Well, 5:50, Becky told me, but she wasn't sure.
This
But-
is the 21st.
Yeah,
I
Yes,
should be home with a kid recovering from oral surgery, so I should be able to make it.
great. I mean, I really hope it's only a couple of minutes. I mean, because there really isn't any controversy.
Yeah. Well, the one thing Jeff brought up with me, I thought this is maybe a good time to mention it. Jeff was inquiring about, for the associate member legislation. So not the appointments, but getting the law changed. So
Yeah,
we met, Jeff and I, with the select board a few months ago, and they were good with the idea. And my thinking was, if we're gonna meet with them, we don't need a quorum for this, so we can make the appointments, but I thought we could, if we can get on their agenda for another 5 minutes, just figure out the logistics, because, I'd be happy to ask the legislators, but it seems like I'd have to do that on behalf of the select board. And if they want to do it directly, or if they want Becky to do it, we should just figure out how that ask is going to happen, and since it should start in the fall.
but why don't we just do that on the 21st when we're there anyway?
And that's what I'm suggesting.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we've covered that. You want
Hey,
to,
well, just one more, I'm gonna be out of town if you end up running into trouble with quorum. I mean, I know at least Michael has my cell phone. I mean, Deacon, you have my cell phone too. I don't know if you're calling me on a landline or a cell phone.
oh, I assure you, I'm calling you from a landline.
Yeah, so, I mean, well, whatever. I mean, you can, you guys, if you run into trouble, try calling and texting, and
Yeah.
I'll be in California 3 hours prior, but if I can, I would hop on to make sure we can do this if we were
Great.
really stuck.
Well, I'll do some email stuff and make sure we get a quorum, and we'll do what we have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if someone drops out like, a day or two before or something, like whatever. I'm just, if it was a dire need, I would try and make it happen, make sure I'm not, driving over a mountain or something.
Great.
I will not be available. I will be kind of in flight.
How about you, Robert? I guess he doesn't hear me.
I came in too late to know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. We're going to be meeting on the 21st, Tuesday of next week, jointly with the select board to approve Jake Messier and Ashley Pycroft for new one-year terms as associate members.
Huh.
And it should take place probably at 5:50. We need to have a quorum of the planning board there for, maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'll aim to make it.
Great. It looks like we're tentatively good.
All right.
Okay. So
So Deacon, you're sure Jake Messier's interested?
I am. I've been in email contact with him.
Okay.
Well, let's move on to the CPC.
Okay, I guess that's me.
Yeah.
So I've been the CPC rep for the planning board for at least 2 years, maybe, I can't know, maybe 3, something like that. Great opportunity, really fun. Everybody should want to do it. Jeff's off the hook because now he's chair of the ZBA, so he doesn't have to do it. And Linda's leaving. I know, so basically we need to have a rep. I have 2 thoughts. One is, Nathan and I had talked about this in the past, but this is before I think he got all those fun additional responsibilities of parenthood. Um, So
don't know
I don't know,
about-
Nathan, you get right of first refusal.
I'll take that right of
That's what I figured.
losing, yeah.
So, and I'm assuming
No.
Robert and Steve, you're not interested in Deacon.
I wouldn't dare take the fun away from you, Michael.
Oh, I'm not gonna do it because since I'm now the chair of the ECAC, I told them that I wasn't gonna continue.
I see.
So, and so I'm giving up the fun too. But, I was sort of assuming no one wanted to do it. And so what I was thinking, and I think I mentioned this to you, Deacon, is that we need a planning board rep. It doesn't have to be someone who's on the planning board.
That's right.
I mean, you could ask Ashley and Jake, but I think we can also just in the interim, I don't think we really need someone until September, but if we wanted to identify someone that we thought could represent us. And I gotta say, it's just people discussing projects that come forth. So there's no like real planning board stuff. It's just that, the way the CPC is constructed, it supports recreation and open space and housing and historic. And somewhere in that mix, the planning board got tapped to have a representative. So it's nothing like a technical representation, just someone who maybe, we would feel good about, who, if there's something that's relevant, they would come back. Like the whole idea of the land near Jeff's house, for example, it doesn't directly affect us, but it's good to know. So I'm willing to sort of shake the bushes. Is that what I can't remember the expression. But if anyone wants to think of folks,
Beat the bushes.
beat the bushes. There you go. Thank you. So I'm willing to beat the bushes, but if everyone collectively wants to do that, we can maybe try to come up with a name, in the next couple months, and then we can forward it to the CPC, if that sounds like a good pathway.
Well, I think the thought that I had on this was that I think we should talk to Jake and Ashley first,
Okay,
because this would be a good thing for them to do and get them more involved.
yeah, I'm happy as the leaving CPC person, I'm happy to email them and sort of, let them know what it entails and see if they're interested, and then I can get back to you, Deacon.
Yeah, well, it sounds like there's not a huge hurry also.
No, I think they're in transition. I think, having bodies is good, but they have a new chair too, who has
Yeah.
energy, so that's good. But,
Well, I'll definitely put this on the next agenda.
okay,
Okay. My thought is maybe we should skip over the minutes for now and hope that Carrie gets her Wi-Fi back together before we're done and come back to it. Let's review the annual town meeting.
okay. So I guess that's me. Steve and I were the only ones who were there. I would say it was a lot of fun. I wish you were there. Not. So the ZBA bylaw went as was discussed on May 18th, where the select board was trying to figure out if they should pass it over or have it considered. And it was raised and we recommended, I sort of reported out the way Jeff had written it up, that, we originally recommended it, and then with the resignations, we didn't think it was a good idea. And so that got dealt with accordingly. And then the citizen petition came up at the very end, and there was no conflict there because we'd already discussed the issue. So I think that did not advance. So it's not a live bylaw that got dealt with, in terms of sending the AG. And then the energy storage, that was pretty stressful, and unfortunate, I think. So, we had I don't know, 480 people at the beginning of the meeting when the library vote was happening. So huge turnout. By the time, I think it was Article 21 was energy storage. By the time that came around, it was well into the afternoon and there were 66 people. So quite the drop. My observation, which Donna was also there, agreed. And Steve, I don't know if you were still there then. Were you still there then?
No, I didn't make it that far into the meeting.
Okay, so I didn't want to speak, if for you if you were there, but so I think what Donna and I agreed was that 99% of the intent of the energy storage, there was no issue with. So there was 3 residents who had issues with the residential component, what we were calling the on-site energy storage. And it was somewhat unfortunate and a little ironic because I think the planning board's intent was to give them a pass, that really it was by right with site plan review, and you just needed to have a building permit and et cetera, whatever permitting was required. But the intent was to make it easy and let people do it. And what we got hung up on was the definition of that. That people were feeling like they generated electricity, and the way we defined it was going to trip them up because either they were from their RECs, they were generating energy, or hypothetically, they wanted to, like, if they had an electric car and they were generating energy, or they were we spent, I don't know, 20 minutes or so on just that tidbit. There was literally no discussion about the commercial energy storage. So no one had an issue with that.
Michael, did they perceive it as a stepping on their individual's toes,
Yes,
basically?
Yeah.
Restrictive?
correct.
Okay.
Which is, and that was the unfortunate part, because I think, the intent was not to do that, but that's how they perceived it. And there were no comments about the commercial at all, which was, unfortunate. So the vote ended up, we needed 44 votes to pass. We got 43. And then it was actually interesting because there was a immediate request for a recount, which I've never seen at town meeting before. And Paul Lyons did that. And I think we lost one vote in the interim because someone went to the bathroom or something. So, so it was close, and I'd say the other thing, I wrote it up in my report, but I ended up in the moment trying to sort of craft language in that definition about the on-site / residential to see if I could appease, their concerns, because they were missing what I thought was the big part of intent of the bylaw. And it didn't work in terms of just the 3 of them sort of complaining about the bylaw for, I don't know, 20 minutes or something, sort of, affected the vote. So it failed. So it's not active, and we can talk about the next steps later in the agenda. But I would say, sometimes town meetings are stressful. This was particularly stressful. It would have been great to have someone there to turn to, like I was thinking, in past, Jeff and I have sort of played off each other, where, you get a breather while someone else talks. And it's not to dump on anybody, but it was a little hard.
We'll do it that way next time.
Yeah. No more graduations.
Yeah, they're done.
So that was the meeting. And I guess we could say congratulations to Robert and Jeff, who got reelected.
Yeah, nice going, Mr. Jeff.
Thank you.
So, well, I want to thank you, Michael. I didn't have the heart to be there. I had a hard time. Do we want to talk about this more?
Well, we had a follow-up conversation, you, Michael, Donna, and I. So I don't know, at some point we ought to just recap what came out of that discussion. And we sort of charted a way forward here.
Yeah, well, I think if we lump the next three items together, we can just have one big discussion, that sort of follow-up, because they're all sort of related, the tracer lane and the energy generation and the energy storage. If that makes sense, Deacon?
Absolutely. I was having a hard time distinguishing them.
Jeff, how about I kick it off and then you can chime in?
You bet.
So there were two things that happened. So, Tracer Lane is the Waltham case that went before the SJC. And, we knew there was going to be a decision in June because that's when the SJC makes those decisions. And it came down on June 2nd. So that provided some clarity, which we can go into. I'm just sort of laying out the broad brushstrokes without the details. So one of the points of information was the SJC made a decision, which filled in some of the blanks. And then with the energy storage bylaw getting rejected, that was another point of information. And energy generation, I think, is just sort of mixed in there. But given those two strands of occurrences, as Jeff said, he and Deacon Donna and I touched base last week in advance of this meeting to figure out what do we do, because the pathway legally has sort of been a little bit better described for us with the SJC decision, although not totally. And then the energy storage, clearly we had to do some work. So I don't know, Jeff, you want to go from there and then I can fill in, or you want me to keep going?
Sure. I think after a lot of discussion, we came to the conclusion that for a couple of different reasons, we probably ought to open up the solar bylaw to address some weaknesses that it may have in light of the Tracer Lane decision. We want our bylaw to stand up. I think we're in better shape than Waltham for sure, but there are some issues that I think we can address, because we don't want to be challenged and have the court look at us and conclude that we are similar to Waltham in any way. So we've been refraining from opening up the solar bylaw because we're a little worried about some hostile amendments, but I think we need to do it. So I believe the four of us kind of agreed that we would look at that. Another point that I made, and by the end of the meeting, I think folks concurred, was that the energy storage really is difficult and awkward to do as a standalone use. That really it's what all it is a component of solar. And it might also be applicable to wind if we ever got a wind project. But right now, the only two forms of energy generation that are allowed in town are solar and wind. Solar because we have to, and wind because we did. So if we deal with energy storage as a component in the solar bylaw, so we open up the solar bylaw and we put an energy storage provisions in there, that's probably the neatest way to go, because then it dovetails nicely. We don't have to write as much. It's to me a shorter section. And in the use table, we list it, well, we define it in the definitions, and then we list it in the use table as a principal use and say no, 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 no. And then we put a citation to our solar bylaw, which explains how it can be a part of a solar project or a wind project. And we write it once and we put it in the solar section, and then we simply cite it in the wind section. We don't have to write it again. We just cite what we've done in energy storage and make it applicable to wind as well if we ever get one of those projects. So Michael and Deacon, I think that's what we kind of concluded would be our approach.
Yeah, at the beginning, I wasn't thinking that was the way to go. By the end of this conversation, I think, it makes a lot of sense. So I totally agree. I think just to sort of give some details about things that we want to tweak is, the Tracer Lane / SJC decision had a couple of things. Because the issue is you don't want to have litigation where you have to prove that we're complying with the law. So one of my big takeaways was, well, there's a couple of takeaways. So Waltham, as Jeff has pointed out in the past, was effectively prohibitive because although I think the SJC calculated pretty narrowly, it was about 1 or 2% is what they officially said where solar was allowed. I mean, they allowed rooftop everywhere, but in terms of non-rooftop, it was 1 or 2%. And so the SJC ended up, this I personally find problematic. It's a little concerning, but the state has this 250 decarbonization roadmap. And basically the SJC said, if a municipality is only allowing 1 to 2%, it's not, it's going against the will or the welfare of the Commonwealth, which has this 250 roadmap. And so I think to Jeff's point, we are much more allowing than Waltham, but we just have to sort of revisit that and make sure that that's really clear. So that's, I think, one of the big things. The other thing that was interesting is that the SJC said that the Waltham bylaw that prohibited, if you remember, it was a access road in Waltham going to a solar development over the border into Lexington. And so Waltham basically said they weren't allowing it because the solar use was not residential and the road going through Waltham to Lexington was through a residential area. And the zoning that Waltham was using was not a solar bylaw. But what they said was, although that wasn't a solar bylaw, they reaffirmed that the only reasons that a municipality could regulate solar is for public health, welfare, and safety. And so one of the things we have to do, and Donna was agreeing with this, is just make sure we're very explicit that the reasons for our solar bylaw, just make it more explicit. Like, if we're trying to protect drinking water, well, clearly that's public health and welfare, but you have to make it more explicit. So retooling in that regard, making sure that some of the language makes clear that we're not as prohibitive in terms of where we're able to put it.
Just to piggyback on what you just said about health, safety, and welfare, we may want to take a look at our purpose section again in the.
I did it this morning.
Yeah, and incorporate that in there and expound on what we mean by public welfare, which is the expandable category.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the way to do it.
Yeah.
Well, it's fine for us to define public welfare, but how will the state, or let's say in a legal situation, how will it be defined?
Well, I was thinking I'd do a little research in terms of precedent to see how it pops up within the state context, the legal context, so that we can sort of mimic that. But I think stating it, as Jeff said, I was tinkering with that paragraph this morning, but I think to do a little work to your point, Steve, to make sure that we understand what's perceived and expressed as public welfare, so we can sort of put some meat on the bones of the concept.
Right.
And then it makes it more defensible.
Yeah.
Aside from redefining the purpose sections in that way, are there any specific restrictions that our bylaw contains that should be revisited?
I don't think so. I think it's just a matter of making it explicit. Like, we have to draw a line between the 3 allowable reasons and what we then regulate. And I think, as Jeff points out all the time, we have a waiver section, so we're not prohibiting necessarily. We're regulating, because you can only do it for those 3 reasons. But so I don't think so, Robert. The only other thing I would add, which Donna didn't know the answer to, but it's interesting, slash a little concerning is what the SJC said was they perceived the access road, because it was going to the solar development, to be part and parcel of the development. And therefore, it wasn't really a road, it was part of the solar development. And so originally, when we were constructing the energy storage bylaw as an accessory use, what Donna had originally suggested is that municipalities are allowed to regulate accessory use. They can't prohibit it, but they can regulate it because it doesn't come under the solar prohibition. But it's conceivable that, you know, it would, because energy storage is required by DOER for any smart application, that it is part and parcel of the whole project. So it gets to Jeff's point about making this part of the solar bylaw, that we're just regulating it as part of solar, and then by extension, we can reference wind. But I think that was a new concept that they also, the SJC sort of developed.
I take a little different view on looking at our solar bylaw. And I think we do need to revisit some of our language. And think about how a court would view it. I did a little analysis on comparing Waltham, what they would allow versus what Shutesbury would allow. And in this decision, you can see, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 times the court keeps saying they only allow 1.5 to 2% in their industrial district. That's not enough. That's not enough. So I calculated what 2% of Waltham is, and it's 174 acres, if I've got my math right. 2% of Shutesbury is 340 acres. Again, I'm just going from what I remember the area of Shutesbury to be. So 340 acres. But if you look at our bylaw, we have numbered blocks of land where you can do a solar farm. And I think we've got 8 left. You know, if you read it, the Wheelock block is already taken. And then there's some that might not be eligible because they're mostly DCR land, but say there's 8 of them that still can have a solar farm. Well, we limit the solar facility, the total facility, of 15 acres. So 8 times 15 is 120 acres. So if a court looked at it that way, they could say, well, gee whiz, you've got even less than Waltham. Probably not the case, because the industrial zone in Waltham is probably filled up with stuff. And, you know, maybe there's not a lot of available land, and we've got virgin land. So maybe we do have an honest 120 acres, but still, it's only 120 acres. So I worry about that a little bit. You know, just the sheer amount that we allow. I also worry a little bit about the biomap 2 restriction. I looked that up today, and the old biomap in the master plan is almost 20 years old, but the new one, the new biomap 2, has 2 different categories, which are listed in our solar bylaw, where you can't do solar: critical natural landscape, and then core habitat. So the critical natural landscape is almost much of Shutesbury. It's about 80%. It excludes the town center and along some roads, a few other places, mostly linear along roads. But most of the blocks of land where you could propose a solar in the FC is in this critical natural landscape, about 80% of the town. The core habitat category is a subcategory of the critical natural landscape, and that's about 15% of the town. It's much less. So I'm starting to think about maybe we revisit those prohibitions, and perhaps keep the prohibition with the core habitat, because that is a more important area, it appears, and then put something in the other areas, the critical natural landscape, that it's highly discouraged, and that in order to do something in there, you have to do some type of analysis or something. I don't know. But just on its face, it really looks like they can't even propose them in these areas. So I worry about that. I
So
worry
Jeff,
about looking at that and saying, wait a minute, you just ruled out most of the town here. I know you have a waiver, but and we always say we've got a waiver, but I worry the court's not going to be assuaged by that waiver.
so Jeff,
In this
if
case.
I can just jump in on a couple of things. So to clarify, when Robert said, is there anything that we don't allow that we should consider? I think that's true. I don't think you're necessarily disagreeing with it. And I actually agree with you that the concern is, what I heard from you is, we have to be cognizant about how much is perceived to be allowable, which is it's different than like, can you do X, Y, or Z? It's sort of how much of where you can put stuff. So I actually don't, just to clarify, I don't think I'm disagreeing with you. The one thing I would say that Donna pointed out is that, because we did, when we talked about this, she said, we are different from Waltham because we have all this forested land. And so if we feel like it's a legitimate thing to protect, it's not that we should not protect it, but we should go into that conversation knowing that this is the lens of the SJC. And to your point, figure out how do we articulate the health, welfare, and safety components of it. So I think, it's going to take some back and forth for sure, but I guess for everybody else, I don't think I'm disagreeing with you.
Could I make a comment?
Please.
Hi, yeah. So I'm just going to make a suggestion. We, on the Conservation Commission, hired some consultants to help us with some regulatory language that came up around our local wetlands bylaw in regards to the ANRADs, the solar ANRADs. But in that process, I was interviewing some hydrogeologists as potential consultants to help us with the regulatory language. And I spoke with a hydrogeologist named Neil Price, who's with an environmental company in the southeast part of the state called Horsley and Witten. And he is he's consulting with the Wareham Planning Board as a third-party reviewer for a solar project, and developed a model for assessing the impact on well water and water quality for solar developments, because they have an area where the concern is about well water and septic systems. And you might want to talk to someone like him and think about what kind of evaluations or assessments you want from the applicant. Particularly if you're looking at health and safety and you're thinking about water quality protection, there might be some hydrogeological modeling that would be important to have.
Well, one thing,
process.
yeah, Donna, we actually discussed this. I mean, and Donna was referencing the Concom's work. Her suggestion to us was that rather than come up with some kind of assessment that then the planning board would have to decide, is this assessment mean that it's good or bad or in between or whatever, that we really should be tying whatever to some state or federal pre-existing standard. So if X is a standard and you can describe it in a certain way that it's sort of objective, it's already established. And this way it takes the burden off of the planning board to sort of be able to have to find a consultant to do any kind of evaluation. And then for us to have to evaluate, is that sufficient for them to go forward or not sufficient? Whereas if it's an external standard, so that's part of, I think, the work of what we have to do. And I don't know if it exists or not. I will say as a footnote, I mean, I don't know what kind of consulting is doing to Wareham, but I mean, Wareham and Carver are getting slammed in terms of their solar developments. And I would say some of the land, at least in Wareham and Carver, I mean, it's getting destroyed. So I don't know if he's if he's doing a good job or not, but it seems like the planning board's asleep at the wheel. So, but anyway, that was her feedback.
So can I ask a question? It can't critical natural landscapes, how does that, or does it relate to public welfare, health, and safety?
Well, I think that's the question. I mean, it's, what I would say, personally is that in the bigger picture of places like Shutesbury contributing to the climate crisis, then what we have to offer is vital ecosystems and forests and good water systems. And so if we start damaging those and getting, cut up forests that are not as vibrant, then by extension, you're reducing the public welfare, but that's an argument that would get litigated. So I think we have to sort of, if there's a direct line, we have to be explicit about it. But I think that's sort of the question. Because
then,
right now it's open to interpretation.
And then along those same lines, the other area, Jeff, you said 15% was core habitat?
It just rough, 10-15% of the town is core habitat.
And what's that total acreage? Do you know offhand? Approximately.
Huh?
Yeah, approximately.
3,000 or 4,000 acres.
2,500.
Okay. And so again, Michael, it's another tier of argument that core habitats are related to public health, safety, and welfare. In other words, it seems like we have two tiers. We have the top tier, which is critical natural, what do you call it? Critical
Natural
landscapes. And then I'll say a subset of that is these core habitats. One of those has to be protectable, I would think. In other words, elite from litigation. They both, I think an argument can be made that they both relate to public health, welfare, and safety. And if the first level, critical natural landscapes doesn't, then at the very least, the core habitat should.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I haven't researched it yet, but I think like your point now and your previous point is exactly the homework that, like we agreed that I'd be the point person, that I'd confer with Jeff as we go along, but that the more we can refine it and make really strong connections between these two, the core habitat and the critical natural landscapes and the public health, welfare, and safety, and some external standards to determine, like if X happens, that means that these things are degraded versus they're not degraded. That it's taking it out of our lap of having to discern if it's degraded or not, or acceptable or not. It seems like those are all the dots that have to get connected. So it tightens it up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, maybe following on Miriam's thought, whether or not getting an expert to address these questions and using that experts council as a guide to what we do might serve to be a good defense for our bylaw were it challenged.
Well, we have some money, right, Deacon, if we wanted to hire someone?
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, in the absence of an application where the consultant cost could be passed along, I'm not sure that our budget right now would permit that. I simply don't know.
Okay.
I did have a question. I mean, Jeff, you're talking about, you know, the waivable provisions with respect to the biomap stuff. Would that legal question arise in a situation that it seems to me that would arise in a situation where we had decided not to waive?
Well, that's, of course, what we would hope. You know, that
Would it come up otherwise?
I don't know. I don't know. You know, I mean, I can understand having, you know, certain requirements that are waivable, but having almost every project that would come in have to seek a waiver, a
Yeah,
discretionary waiver, might be too much.
It
Yeah.
kind of defeats the purpose of a solar zoning bylaw.
It seems like, you know, going back to the, you know, on its face versus how it's, I forget what the other term is, how it's enacted upon. What's the term of art, Jeff? It's,
The facial challenge versus as applied.
yeah, as applied. So, I mean, it seems like we want to make sure that on its face, people can't object, you know, that it's legitimate on its face. And then I think the as it's applied gets to your point, Deacon. Like, people can always have an issue of how it was applied. But at least on the face of it, it's based on our understanding of what the SJC is saying, it's got to pass muster. But you know, what the SJC did not say, they said 1 to 2% is too little. They didn't say anything else. They didn't say 10% is good, 20% is good. It has to be 70%. And that's like when I was referring about the 250 carbon roadmap, that's the issue, you know, because they're saying that 1 to 2% goes against the intent of the Commonwealth in terms of addressing the climate crisis. But they don't.
You mean 2050?
2050, what did I say?
250.
Oh, 2050, yeah. You know, so they didn't put in a standard there. And then they also, the other thing that was interesting with the SJC was the amicus brief that we signed on to went into the history of Chapter 48, Section 3, Paragraph 9. The fact that it was, you know, created in 1985 when commercial photovoltaics didn't exist. And they explicitly said, we're not going into the history on this decision. So, you know, the whole legitimacy of, was it really intended for rooftop and is applicable to commercial, they didn't even address. So that's like a case down the road that eventually they might have some case law on. So I think all we can do is construct it based on the partial information that they gave us and try to be defensive about it. But down the road, you know, they might make some other decision and we'll see where it goes.
I mean, they did say some encouraging things in there too. They certainly acknowledged that this was a different type of Section 3, you know, the Dover Amendment exemption than many of the others, that towns can do more to regulate these. They were clear in that. You know, unlike, say, a religious use or an educational use or a daycare or some of those other ones, where the hands of the municipality are really tied. I mean, they did say we have greater powers here. So they acknowledge we have latitude. And, you know, as far as health, safety, and public welfare, you know, I've heard all of zoning described with that purpose. You know, just in a national conversation about zoning. I mean, we don't have a purposes section in Massachusetts to look at, but I've heard all of zoning come under that purpose, to fit all of zoning under that purpose. So it's pretty broad, and there's all kinds of examples around the country, and our court does look beyond its own borders when it decides some things. So you can fit an awful lot into public welfare.
The other thing that comes to mind, just sort of changing tack a bit, is aside from the substance, we're also talking about the timing. And so, what I was suggesting to Jeff and Deacon is that there's a decent likelihood that we might have a special town meeting to deal with the school roof. And so I was planning on working on this, like I started this morning. But what I'd love to do is sort of work on it and advance it, and so that if we were able to, and Donna doesn't think it's, we have the energy storage language for the most part, and we already have an existing solar bylaw that's gotten, 2 revisions from the original, so it's had 3 iterations already. So working this is not as heavy a lift as starting from scratch, but I think what I'd like to try to do, if we can, just process-wise, is get it ready for a special town meeting in the fall, because the sooner we have something in place, the better. Because every one of these solar projects, if it goes forward, is going to have energy storage as a requirement if they want to have smart funding. So the more we can get ahead of that, the better. So if I can get something to us, if assuming we're having a July meeting, my hope is to get a draft that, Jeff and I can have massaged a little bit, and then we can discuss.
Michael, one question before we leave the other discussion, before we move,
Yeah.
not ESS, but when you were talking about doing research, were you talking about doing research that kind of was added some substance to this big umbrella that Jeff's talking about of public health, welfare, and safety?
Yeah,
There were some nuts and bolts to that.
I think so. I think it's a matter of, I don't necessarily, Jeff's the official planner because he does it professionally, but my general sense is he's on target with, that zoning has a purpose,
Right.
and that's the purpose. But, where I've come down is the better and tighter our bylaw is, the more explicit it is. We want to stay away from being litigated, and having to make these arguments in a court, where if we can just put them in black and white and it's clear, we're in better position. So I think that's what I was trying to do, is just sort of do some research to get more clarity about, like you said, how does the state define public welfare if they define it anywhere else? And then looking at, the habitats and stuff. And there's probably some strategies we can approach, like Jeff was talking about, in terms of either saying why we have to keep what we have in terms of the percentage restrictions, or massage them with added requirements if we're reducing them. Like, that's the stuff I want to figure out, if that answers the question.
I think it does.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure how you research something like that. Other than water quality and, and water supply and possibly forest fragmentation, I'm not sure what else you could come up with, but that's where the research comes into play.
Yeah, and I'm not sure either. I'm guessing, I'm just sort of thinking that, a couple of months ago, we talked about getting the online account to whatever the planning thing is that Jeff subscribes to. And I think I might just get one for myself. And Robert, do you have access to Nexus Lexus?
I haven't since I retired.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know, Steve. I think, it's also looking, I think, in parallel. There's got to be parallel stuff, whether it's water or land use and stuff, but I don't know. I'm not sure what it is, and I don't know how detailed we have to get.
Mhm.
But I think asking the questions, and I think we're pointing in the right direction. But if I come up with stuff and I run it by Jeff and he thinks it's good, then we're in good shape. And if we come up empty, we'll have to brainstorm a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy that Michael is going to be the lead drafter, because I'm going to be busy with the other board for a while. So editing and commenting and things like that, I'm fine with, but I'm happy that he's taking the lead. So it's good.
It'd be good teamwork like before. Any other questions about this stuff? I think, it's a work in progress, but if we can bring stuff back for July discussion, hopefully that'll be good.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. And I'm sure, I think at the town level, I'm hopeful because most of the town, they voted for the solar bylaw 3 times in a row. And as I said, I don't think there was substantive issue with the commercial energy storage. So it's really sort of looking at how we make sure we address the state issues as opposed to the town stuff.
Well, if it doesn't get approved, we have what we have.
Yeah,
And
Jeff froze, right? Okay.
I can't hear him.
we can still, we're not in quite as strong a position, but we can still regulate it. Oh, internet connection.
Yeah,
Oh,
we heard you.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Deacon, I have a little Wheelock report when the time comes. So
Well, maybe this is a good time where, why not?
okay. Yeah, Michael jogged me today on that. I had called Joel Walker a couple weeks ago or so, week and a half ago, and left a message. I called, his phone answering machine was filled up, so I emailed him. Hadn't gotten a response, so I called him today and got him on the phone. Apparently, the contractor from Vermont that they had hired day before he was supposed to start a number of weeks ago, went into the hospital for some reason, and he's just now getting back to work. So nothing's been done yet. But what Joel is planning is for the work to be done next week, the week of the 19th, June 19th. And if that happens, we talked about a post-construction site visit in the future, and he threw out some dates. I did go out there. I think must have been after the last meeting. I can't remember when I was out there. I did go out there. Yeah, and I reported to the board. That's right. So it had to be before the last meeting. Okay, and took a bunch of pictures. I was the only one there. So he's suggesting possibly July 5th, 6th, or 7th for a post-construction meeting.
We do the 8th. I'll be out those other days.
8th is a Friday. It's not a day that he put out there.
Oh,
He put out the 5th in the afternoon, the 6th in the morning, or the 7th in the AM. And I could ask about, if this doesn't work for folks, I could ask, but that's what he put out.
okay. Well, I don't want to hold everything up, but I know like those 2 days I'll be out of town. I'll be around the whole next week. So if that would work for people.
Well, there were 3 days, 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah, those are the 3 days I'm out. I'm leaving on the 4th and coming back on the 7th.
Okay. I mean, possibly we could get somebody from the Concom. I mean, I think if we have one representative from each board, that would be good.
Do you know, Jeff, like, I mean, if you did it then, is it also possible just to get permission for like me to go up the next week? I mean, as long as they allow it, we can go up there. We just, even as planning board people, we can't just go moseying up without that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to get something before our next meeting, so we could
Yeah,
talk
that's-
about, so we could talk about it a little bit on the 11th.
Right, that makes sense. And when's he doing the work?
Huh?
He's doing the work starting next week?
If all goes according to plan, the work should start on the 20th.
Okay,
That's my week of vacation, so I'm gone. But then this would be, you know, sneaking in another field visit to compare with what the existing conditions are, and then have something to talk about on the 11th.
yeah. Well, if, just speaking for me personally, I mean, I could do the 29th and the 30th, but if you can ask for permission, if I can go up on the 8th or the morning of the 11th, I would just walk up and look. It'd be nice to put eyes on it is all.
I am not, I will ask.
Yeah.
I don't think they want unaccompanied people up in there.
Yeah,
Um,
tell them I won't touch anything.
okay, Michael, give me your date.
So the dates that I'm available on the 8th, if you wanted to do that. And the morning of the 11th, I could do too, which is before our meeting. And then I'd be around on the 29th and the 30th if if weekdays, if you wanted to just let me go up there too. But I'll email you so you have it written down.
Okay. Miriam, did you say a Concom member, what is it, Beth Wilson is available on Mondays?
She's sometimes available, not
Sometimes.
always.
Okay.
I'm pretty available at this point. I wasn't local for a while, but I am now.
Okay, so you would be a possibility on those,
Yeah,
on those first dates that he put out, the 5th, 6th, or 7th.
yeah, I could do any of those.
I would be inclined to do it on the 5th.
5, you said 5th?
Yeah. Usually PM site visits work better for me.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I'll confirm with him Tuesday, the 5th in the PM for Miriam and me. Anyone else wants to go? And then I'll inquire about Michael's dates and get back to him.
Thank you.
Okay?
That's good. Thanks.
Thanks for doing that.
No problem. I'm really interested to see if they can get that basin to work like it's supposed to. How we doing there, Mr. Chairman? Is
I
It's
think
still a little light
we're,
out, time for a walk.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, have we covered all the energy issues as much as we want to?
Yeah. Well, I got nothing more to say.
Nathan, nice hairdo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
That's why I turned my camera off. I just been sitting here pulling my hair out this whole time.
wish I had that much to play with.
Hey,
Yeah.
Carrie's here. I'm just curious before we go.
Hi.
So we recorded it. So the part that you missed, you can probably get, but is there anything you need from us since you had
No,
your
I should
technical
be-
difficulties?
I should be able to get it from the recording, and if I have any questions, then I can just always email you.
Cool.
Great,
Yeah,
great.
so sorry about that. This had happened to me yesterday. I have fiber optics, and I don't know, it like crashed at me something similarly at the same time yesterday. So I rebooted it, like just a soft reboot, and it worked. So I thought everything was fine and dandy, and then I tried opening the meeting, and it just completely shut off, and I was like, oh, all right. And I couldn't get any calls or texts because my Wi-Fi, my phone, my computer, my TV, like everything was gone. So it was left in the dark.
Yeah.
You got to do what Deacon does. Old school landline.
But yeah, I'm calling the company tomorrow and see if someone can come over and look at it just in case.
Well, one thing I would note, I mean, now that Carrie has joined us, we might want to go back to the minutes, which we skipped over.
Which, can I ask, I know that we have to discuss May 9th and 18th, at least I think we do.
Right,
But can,
right.
can you review what the deal is with November 8th and December 6th?
My understanding is that December 6th simply, I don't know, some communication needs to be made with the town clerk, because that was a select board thing, I think.
And do we need to approve it, or did we approve it? I don't remember.
I thought we did last meeting.
Yeah, look, that list is only that list is those sets of minutes which Grace shows as not being available on the town calendar. So that's just what has to get to her. And I think that Nathan still owes the 11/8, and I'm not sure what has to happen to get the 12/6 to Grace for her to acknowledge that that's been done. So
Yeah, I think the 11/8 is on me. I don't know what's going on with 12/6, but
I think that's one where it was a joint meeting with the select board.
Yeah, so I'm looking back in my minutes and you approved them. Basically, they were from select board and it said that Nathan had used those, but just acknowledged that they were the same as select board's minutes.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that one there's just some communication glitch with Grace.
that might be me.
We just have to send them to Grace so she can post them if we approved them.
Yeah.
Right. I thought I did it, but I think I didn't. So I'm opening up a Word doc I have, and if it's looks good, then I'll just send that in.
Great. Good. Well, let's talk about 5/9 and 5/18.
Oh, God.
Well, I'll move to approve the minutes of May 9th, 2022.
Second.
A second. That was Jeff?
Yep.
Okay. Discussion?
Well, I had sub edits. There was nothing massively substantive, but there's more than we maybe want to. I mean, I could talk through them really quickly if you want to, Deacon. I'm not sure if anyone else has.
Well, why
any.
don't you say what you want?
I'll share, actually.
Yeah.
That might be smart. That's okay.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a much easier way. So I just put Daily Hampshire Gazette because that's what it's called. And then we had a conversation about the ZBA, and I just changed these things to make it a little clear. So I wrote 3 members as opposed to just 3. Supermajority is needed. Rather than saying it, I said the bylaw. Same thing, instead of saying it, I said our report can be orally delivered in 1 sentence is sufficient. So these are all just little clarifications. And I said, therefore, the petition. So just trying to be a little more specific, but there was nothing substantive changing. And then when we had the energy storage discussion, on site was sort of the term that we used. So I capitalized it and then I just parenthetically described that it was non-commercial. So that anyone reading it would understand what on site was, because otherwise you need the context. I just made PB capital since it was not. And then for the light pollution decision, similar kind of stuff. So I just, instead of she, I said Donna. I fixed the colleagues because it was a typo. Made bylaws lowercase, and then try to clarify this concept that it was noted that general bylaws cannot be grandfathered, meaning they're effective immediately. And similar stuff noted that I just wrote the petitioner presents. So those are the edits that I made. It was just mostly just trying to clarify for the reader's experience.
Good.
And I sent it to Carrie earlier today, so.
Yeah, I'll look at that and I will fix those.
Assuming everyone's okay with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, they're an improvement. So that's five, so does anybody want to say anything else about 5.9? I'll call the roll. Linda,
I was not at that meeting, so,
okay,
I mean, look good to me.
yeah. Steve,
Aye.
Robert,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Nathan,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
I'm an aye. Well, let's move on to 5.18.
I'll move to approve the minutes of May 18th, 2022.
Second,
Second.
discussion?
Those are much shorter. I had just a handful of edits, if you want me to share my screen.
Oh, please.
Okay. So the first is just Jeff is appointed to the ZBA as opposed to elected, so I just corrected that. And these are just sort of typo things. So it was a proposal as opposed to proposed. And I wrote proposed bylaw. It was just, as opposed to saying proposal, it's really just sort of a proposed bylaw. I added an A and I think that's it. So short and sweet.
Looks good.
Great. Any more discussion? I'll call the roll. Steve,
Aye.
Nathan,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Linda,
I believe I was not there at that meeting either.
okay. Michael,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Oh, and Robert,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Great. So. I mean, it looks like we're getting ready to close. I do want to say one thing. I would like it very much if somebody else wanted to run for chair in the new year. I'm going to be 75 in the fall, and I think that before utter dotage gets to me, it would be good to have someone else online.
I mean, the other way to look at it is, Deacon, think of all the wisdom you've accumulated.
Yeah, that's pretty modest.
Yeah, shave your beard and you'll take 10 years off and you'll feel great.
Okay, well, so I would encourage you folks to think about this because
You're just warning us for when you turn 80, we have 5 years to think about it.
no, not five. I'm pretty good for 75, but it's all downhill from here.
Duly noted.
Okay, thank you for that. You've been chair a long time, Deacon. Jeez.
I know I have. And
I think you took over after John Thompson, right? Wasn't it right after John?
that's right. That's I think he was
26 years ago when I got on the board, John was the chair for a little while.
for a little while. Then he got attacked by the Taylor woman.
So I guess I want to know, compared to Chuck, who had 20 odd years on the ZBA, like, do you have more than him?
I think Chuck's got 20. He's going out at 20.
So do-
I think
Yeah.
I think I joined the board in 95.
When did you become chair?
It was an unfortunately short period after that. John didn't last much longer. I can't remember,
Chuck-
but you're,
Yeah, Chuck wasn't chair for 20. Andy Nazar was.
Oh,
chair
right.
20. Yeah,
I was on the ZBA for a year or so. I think I was an alternate, though.
But-
Way back when I didn't know anything.
but if we get a new chair, I could be helpful to that person.
You'd still be on the board, though.
Yes.
Nathan, think of what you can aspire to.
What's that?
Think of what you can aspire to.
Yeah.
It wasn't a groundswell.
You're right.
I mean, you know.
Everyone needs a challenge, Nathan. If you're not growing, you're just standing still.
Yep, I know. It's just making me, quiver with joy just to think about it.
I mean, I'd say CPC or chairmanship, like clearly chairmanship is
There's
the way to go.
in the road, right?
It's a lot of power, Nathan.
all right, well, it's something to think about.
Yeah,
So I think for the moment, I'm going to move that we adjourn.
I think that's an
Second.
excellent idea. I haven't heard a second yet.
I did.
Yeah, he's got it.
Good. I'll call the roll unless there's. some-
Wait, what about discussion?
I'll call the roll unless there's discussion. So speak quickly. Okay, I'll call the roll. Steve,
Aye.
Nathan,
All right.
Robert,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Good. Well, thank
All
you
right.
all.
Have a good one.
Have a wonderful
Yeah.
evening.
You too.
Deacon, before you go, I'm not gonna be here for the July meeting. I'll be off paddling in case there's a quorum issue.
That'll be really good.
All right. Good night, all.
Good
Good night.
night.
All right.